Gary Ridgway. Again, not a famous name. If you stop people in the street, wherever you are, you power hour people, and you say, excuse me, do you know who Gary Ridgway is? I guarantee most people will say, no, I don't. But if you mention the Green River Killer, they might. But he's just not as trendy, he's not as sexy as others, but he's far more prolific. So who's Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer? Well, he was born into quite a normal middle class family, normal upbringing, nothing particularly notable. I've seen interviews with people that grew up with him and grew up with his siblings and went to school with them all and knew them all well. But he did try to kill a kid when he was a child himself. He lured him into the trees and stabbed him. So there's something definitely amiss there with Gary Ridgway. But there wasn't much after that. And then he was in the military for a bit. His wife had an affair with a friend of theirs, and she admitted it when he got out. And people think that that's what turned him against women. And then Gary Ridgway after that hated women apparently. But what's curious is that he got married again, and this woman was absolutely besotted with him. She thought he was the best thing in the world, really in love with him. I've seen her in interviews years after, and she can hardly speak, with the emotion of it all. But I suppose finding out that your husband is a serial killer, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm going to this scrapyard to get spare parts," and was he getting spare parts or was he actually killing someone? Because in the end, he was caught and he pleaded guilty to 48 murders. And we know it was him because he took the police to the bodies. And you can see footage of him, man, it's creepy. Because he just thinks it really is like he thinks it's totally normal. You see him in the interviews, no, I killed her. Yeah, no, I just choked her out, just choke her out like that. And kill her. You wouldn't think the guy was capable of doing it, but then they drive out in the car and he says, stop the car, go into the woods. And he's got a really strong memory of where he's left these bodies. And he left them all along the Green River, hence the name, the Green River Killer. He's just dumping them there, but he was going back for his, sick reasons, to revisit the crime scenes and the bodies and all that kind of stuff. But this was just a totally ordinary guy. And he was picking up prostitutes, and I think because he had easy access to them, he could just go down, get one in the truck. Most women are not going to just get in a truck with you, so you can kill them. But if they're prostitutes, and you look nice, and he used to keep like children's toys in the car, so they knew he was a family man. And the police actually went to his house one day because one of the prostitutes' brothers followed him, and they found the van, the truck outside his house. And two cops went to the door, knocked on the door, and he opened the door and said, "No, I'm the only one here." And they went, "Okay, sorry," and walked away. Yeah, the only one there, the only one who's murdering women all the time. Probably had a dead body in the house when he said that, when he answered the door. And they just left it and walked away. So he was allowed to continue killing women, which he did. And he later admitted, he claimed he killed 80 women. So he's one of the most prolific in American history, but he doesn't get the fame that others get just because he's such a little shite, really. They don't make films about him. But I think they should. It's a very interesting story. So I'm going to move on to my next section, which is Above Suspicion. I love these ones. These are the guys who, obviously, as the title would indicate, these were people who were above suspicion. They were not suspected of the crimes and not suspected of being capable of crimes like that. And who were they? Well, we'll start with John Wayne Gacy. Obviously, John Wayne's a famous name, but John Wayne Gacy, not so much. But maybe the Killer Clown. This was the moniker that he was given. So who was the Killer Clown? Who was John Wayne Gacy? Again, middle class background. Again, the father didn't like him. for the same reasons. He was a sickly child. He always had something wrong with him. The poor kid had some problems, health problems growing up, and he at one point he got hit in the head with a swing, on a park. It hit him in the head really hard, knocked him out, and he had some seizures because of that. And people look to that and say, well, that could have caused some brain damage, altered his brain chemistry in some way. And when he was a young man, he got sent to prison for sodomy. He got 10 years for sodomy. And I think it was with a minor. The other guy was under 18, very young guy. I think he was 15. Can't remember everything, but I think he was 15 anyway. The charge was not paedophilia though. To see how the times change. It wasn't paedophilia, that wasn't the issue. It was sodomy. Imagine trying to make sodomy illegal now. Now obviously, that comes from Sodom and Gomorrah from the Bible, so it's got tremendously negative connotations. It's anal sex, which is not, doesn't have the same connotation as sodomy. Got 10 years for it, right? So he only did about 18 months because he was a model prisoner. He did TV interviews because he was such a model prisoner, cooking for all the prisoners and all that. So he comes out, he gets married, he has a couple of kids, becomes successful in the political arena, becomes successful as a businessman. He's a pillar of the community, John Wayne Gacy. Everyone knows him, everyone loves him. Maybe they knew he'd been in prison, but they didn't care. He was a very popular guy. And he had several businesses. And what he was doing was, I mentioned him being a clown, he was called Bobo the Clown. He used to go to children's hospitals and, do what clowns do to entertain the kids in his spare time for free. This is a model citizen, as I say. But what he was also doing was inviting young men to his house. So he would give a job to a young man, let's say a 17-year-old, 18-year-old guy looking for casual construction work, and then they go for a few beers. We'll come back to mine, we'll drink some whiskey. And they go in, and at some point in the night, he'd say, I'm going to show you something, you're going to like this. And he'd go in the other room, and he'd come back dressed as a clown. Full clown makeup on, right? Now, obviously they'd say, what are you doing? What's with the clown outfit and all that? He said, I'm Bobo the Clown, didn't you know? And then he'd put the handcuffs on himself, and then he'd flick, just flick out the handcuffs. It's a joke, come on, I love it. I'll show the kids in the hospital. And he put the cuffs on them, and then they go, right, well, I can't get out of it. And he said, you need to know the trick. And he said, what's the trick? And he said, well, I've got the key. That's the trick. And then he started beating them with a baseball bat or whatever and stabbing them, and he killed them and raped them and all that, horrible bastard that he was, and buried them under his house. And he buried 33 young men under his house. And during his time, he was being surveilled by the police at certain points because complaints were made. And he used to bring the police into his house and smoke cigars in front of them to cover the smell. And he seemed quite happy and they reported the smell but never searched under his house. They did in the end anyway. And John Wayne Gacy killed 33 young men, and nobody thought John Wayne Gacy was capable of anything like that.